Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the words of the Buddha in this book series titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. Today we're starting a new book, Volume 6. This is titled The Natural Law of Kamma. And here you'll see a collection of teachings from the Buddha related to the natural law of Kamma. What I'm going to do today, rather than start with meditation like we typically do, is start out with a brief introduction to the natural law of Kamma to help kind of prepare anybody who hasn't yet studied the teachings of the Buddha and the group learning program where I introduce students to the natural law of Kamma. So let's talk about the natural law of Kamma in general before we dive in and start talking more specifically using the words of the Buddha in this volume 6. It's important to understand that all the teachings of the Buddha in one way or another come back to the natural law of Kamma. This is what an individual is learning, reflecting on, and practicing. There's other natural laws that he's teaching as well, and that's why I call all the teachings of the Buddha the natural laws of existence. This is kind of the umbrella. And underneath of that, there's the natural law of Kamma, there's dependent origination, and there's other things as well. But in one way or another, the teachings of the Buddha are coming back to this natural law of Kamma. And this is what one is awakening to. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment, you're awakening or you're gaining wisdom of this natural law of Kamma, because there, when you understand the natural law of Kamma, you'll make wise decisions that lead to wholesome outcomes. When we lack the wisdom of the natural law of Kamma, we will make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. And this is what one has been doing throughout their entire life, and is why one experiences struggles and difficulties in life. And some of those struggles and difficulties are things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, the stress, the anxiety, the displeasure, the grief, the misery. All of these discontent feelings and others are all being experienced because one has not yet awakened to the wisdom of what it takes to get to enlightenment, namely the natural law of Kamma. Now, this natural law of Kamma that one needs to awaken to, they need to be able to learn, reflect, to independently verify the teachings, and then practice them. That's how you gain wisdom to awaken to the natural law of Kamma. You're not interested in believing anything. You don't believe the natural law of Kamma, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. So when you awaken to wisdom, you need to go through a process of first learning, like in a class like this or through books. Then you need to reflect on those teachings that you're learning from a teacher and through books to independently verify whether they're true or not. And where you need help, you reach out for that help. And then you practice the teachings. And by practicing this teachings, you're making certain decisions based on the wisdom that you actually have acquired. And this is where you start transforming the mind and you see drastic improvements to the condition of the mind and the condition of your life. Now, as long as you have a lack of wisdom of this natural law, you will tend to make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. But when you have wisdom, you will make wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. And we did exactly the same thing as we were growing up as children, that we were unaware. We had a lack of wisdom. We had ignorance or unknowing of true reality. We had a lack of wisdom of this natural law of gravity. This natural law of gravity is there, always functioning. There's no one who turns it on or turns it off. There's no being who decides, who gravity affects or anything like that. It affects everybody exactly the same. But when we grow up and when we're first born and growing up in the world, we lack wisdom of this natural law of gravity. And therefore, we make lots of unwise decisions that lead to certain unwholesome outcomes. As a child growing up, we fall down, we hit our head, we bust our elbow or our knee, we try to ride bicycles, we fall off. We lack the wisdom of this natural law of gravity. We don't tie our shoes, we don't put things where they really should go in order to ensure that they're safe and they don't fall down and break and things like this. But slowly but surely, as we grow, we awaken to the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. And when we gain this wisdom, we make wiser choices about the way we do things in the world. Because when we lacked the wisdom, we made unwise decisions that led to this unwholesome results of getting our elbow broken or busted open, or our knees busted open, or breaking toys, or knocking over glasses of water, falling down, hurting ourselves, things like that. But slowly but surely, we started learning about this natural law of gravity. And by the time we were about 12 or 14 or 15 or 16, we fully understood this natural law of gravity because we had time to gradually learn it and gradually awaken to the wisdom. And we're at the point now where we could climb a ladder, we could get on an airplane and fly all over the world. We can do many different things that we maybe couldn't have done when we were much younger, because we now have the wisdom of this natural law of gravity, so we make wiser decisions that lead to wholesome outcomes. So gaining the wisdom of the natural law of Kamma is vitally important in order to be able to awaken to this wisdom and then experience the ability to make wiser decisions that lead to wholesome outcomes. So what you're doing on this path to enlightenment, among other things, is you're gaining the wisdom of this natural law of Kamma. What the natural law of Kamma is its cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of our decisions. Sometimes people think that the natural law of Kamma is this mystical, magical thing, or this punishment and rewards, or there's some being or some entity that's deciding that these people get bad things and these people get good things. This isn't what the natural law of Kamma is at all. The natural law of Kamma, which some people refer to as karma in the Sanskrit language, but if you're studying the original teachings of the Buddha in the Pali language, you might decide to use the word Kamma. This natural law of Kamma is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's your life, your decisions, and your results. And as you make decisions through the wisdom of the natural law of Kamma, you will see that there will be wholesome results for you if you're making wise decisions. There's no black cloud following you around. There's no mystical, magical thing. There's no being deciding who gets punishments and who gets rewards. It's just literally the results of your decisions, almost like a sequencing of events. That, for example, if you make the decision to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, then people will tend to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to you. If you're impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, then people will tend to be impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful to you. This is the results of your decisions. That's your Kamma. And then thinking about the sequencing of events, if you're working at a certain occupation and you're getting a paycheck, for example, that's not a punishment or reward. It's not a mystical, magical thing that's happened. It's a sequencing of events. It's the results of your decisions. It's your Kamma. That at one time you didn't know the English language, for example, or any language at all. And slowly but surely you went to school, you studied, you learned, you did your homework, you applied yourself in class, you gained the wisdom of this language of English or whatever other languages that you speak, and then you gained some other skills and other abilities. You performed a certain occupation, you perhaps went to various interviews and learned how to do interviews, learned how to acquire a job, learned how to show up on time and actually perform a certain job. And you've been doing that for a period of time now that you're acquiring a certain paycheck or certain income. And now you have that income to be able to then purchase things in your life that you need. This is just a sequencing of events. It's cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's your Kamma that you now have that paycheck, for example, or however else you end up supporting yourself. This is just an example to help you see that Kamma isn't a mystical, magical thing. It's not punishment and rewards. There's no being who's overseeing this and deciding who gets good things and who gets bad things. Instead, it's your own decisions that are creating any type of result in your life, either wholesome or unwholesome. So as part of understanding this general understanding of the natural law of Kamma, then the next thing is that you might be interested to study more deeply to understand the ins and outs of this natural law of Kamma, because then when you understand the ins and outs of it through the words of the Buddha, then you will more deeply understand the wisdom of the natural law of Kamma and awaken to this wisdom. So today we're starting volume 6 of this book series, which is titled The Natural Law of Kamma. And we're going to be studying the first 10 chapters of this book, where I'm going to be reading each individual chapter, and then I'm going to provide you guys the opportunity to be able to ask any and all questions that you like related to the individual chapters that we're going to be studying. And then in the future classes, we'll just go through 10 chapters at a time. And these chapters sometimes are just a paragraph or two or one page. It's not like they're very long. They're organized in a book series that has extrapolated the various suttas and have these excerpts where you can gain a certain understanding of all the various teachings of the Buddha on the path to enlightenment through getting 1, 2, or 3 golden nuggets per chapter, rather than reading a really long discourse that is not necessarily organized in any particular way. This book series has laid out the teachings of the Buddha in a way that is natural progression for you to be able to gradually learn the teachings of the Buddha and do this in a very manageable way where you can take smaller bites and then digest it rather than taking one big large bite. As we study the natural law of Kamma in this book, it's important to understand that almost everything that you've been learning in terms of the teachings of the Buddha, if you've been learning with me, is in one way or another coming back to the natural law of Kamma. If you learned the Four Noble Truths or the Eightfold Path or the 5 Precepts or any of these other teachings that the Buddha shares, you've been learning about the natural law of Kamma, even though the Buddha doesn't explicitly say that. Now we're going to go into specific teachings that the Buddha has shared specifically about the natural law of Kamma. But just understand that everything you've been learning in one way or another has been coming back to the natural law of Kamma. So as we go today, you're welcome to ask any and all questions that you like. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and I will see that in the comment section and be able to answer your question. And for those of you that are in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. So this first chapter, it's titled 6 Aspects of Kamma to be Understood. Here's the words of the Buddha. Monks, when it was said, Kamma should be understood, the creation of Kamma should be understood, the diversity of Kamma should be understood, the result of Kamma should be understood, the elimination of the creation of Kamma should be understood, the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Kamma should be understood. For what reason was this said? 1. It is volition, choices, decisions, monks, that I call Kamma. For having willed intentional choices and decisions, one acts by body, speech, or mind. 2. In what is the creation of Kamma? Contact is its creation. 3. In what is the diversity of Kamma? There is Kamma to be experienced in hell. There is Kamma to be experienced in the animal realm. There is Kamma to be experienced in the realm of afflicted spirits. There is Kamma to be experienced in the human realm, and there is Kamma to be experienced in the heavenly realm. This is called the diversity of Kamma. In what, monks? In what is the result of Kamma? 4. In what is the result of Kamma? The result of Kamma, I say, is threefold, to be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. This is called the result of Kamma. 5. In what, monks, is the elimination of the creation of Kamma? With the elimination of contact, there is elimination of the creation of Kamma. 6. The Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Kamma, namely, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. When, monks, a noble disciple thus understands Kamma, the creation of Kamma, the diversity of Kamma, the result of Kamma, the elimination of the creation of Kamma, and the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Kamma, he understands this penetrative spiritual life to be the elimination of unwholesome Kamma. When it was said, Kamma should be understood, the creation of Kamma should be understood, the diversity of Kamma should be understood, the result of Kamma should be understood, the elimination of the creation of Kamma should be understood, the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Kamma should be understood. It is because of this that was said. Okay, so I'm going to help you understand this discourse where the Buddha is describing 6 individual aspects of Kamma that need to be understood as you're making your way closer and closer to enlightenment. This is where you're putting the natural law of Kamma under a microscope to deeply understand it. Where in things like the 5 precepts and others, you're understanding how to practice based on the natural law of Kamma, but here the Buddha is going in and putting it under a microscope to really help you understand. So this first aspect of Kamma that the Buddha is saying that you need to understand, and that I would also share that you need to understand these, is that he says, for having willed, which is intentional choices and decisions, one acts by body, speech, or mind. So here what he's explaining is that in order for Kamma to be created, there needs to be intention, or there needs to be a certain will behind the bodily, speech, or mind. So there's these bodily actions, verbal actions, and mental actions, and there needs to be intention behind it. This is why if you're walking down the street and you happen to step on an ant, for example, it wasn't your intention to do that. You're just walking down the street and now you step on an ant. You aren't creating any unwholesome Kamma in that situation. Whereas if you walk down the street actively looking for ants to kill and you're stomping and crushing them, and you're doing this with a mind of inner hate and ill will, this is the intention behind that you're intentionally walking down the street with ill will and hatred and trying to kill these ants. And now you're going to experience the unwholesome results of having that anger, hatred, and ill will towards other beings, and now choosing to kill. But if you're walking down the street and you're just walking and an ant happens to be under your foot, there isn't any will, there isn't any intentional choice that you've made to actively kill this being. So that's what the Buddha is helping you to see here. That is, in order for there to be Kamma, there has to be intention behind it. Then the next thing that he's sharing here is number 2. And what is the creation of Kamma? The way Kamma is created is through contact. There needs to be contact in order for there to be the creation of Kamma. That 2 beings would need to be together. There would need to be some contact in order for there to be creation of Kamma, or contact with some object or something of this nature. There needs to be contact in order to create Kamma. And this becomes important when you understand a subsequent aspect of Kamma that he's going to talk about. So I'll explain this aspect of contact being needed in order to create Kamma in a moment. But now you understand that in order to create Kamma, there needs to be contact. Now, number 3, and what is the diversity of Kamma? Here, this is where the Buddha is explaining that Kamma is going to be experienced in all 5 realms. It doesn't matter what realm a being is in, they're experiencing Kamma in the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. In that particular aspect of Kamma, in the next one, number 4, helps you to understand that you can't run and hide from your Kamma. Because number 4, the Buddha is explaining, and what is the result of Kamma? The result of Kamma, I say, is threefold: to be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. This is where the Buddha is explaining to you that you can't run and hide from your Kamma. If you make unwise decisions, you are going to experience those unwholesome results. And likewise, if you make wise decisions, you will experience those results as well. So when you understand that you can't run and hide from your Kamma, that anything you do, either wholesome or unwholesome, you are going to experience that, then the very next thing that someone's mind should move to is, well, I'm not interested in making any more unwise decisions that are going to lead to unwholesome results and lead to this unwholesome Kamma. Instead, let me cultivate wisdom about this natural law of Kamma so that I can now make wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. So if you understand that you can't run and hide from the decisions you make and the results of those decisions, then the very next wise thing to come to a conclusion on is, well, let me cultivate wisdom about this natural law of Kamma so that I can now make only wise decisions to produce wholesome results. The next aspect here that the Buddha is talking about is, in what, monks, is the elimination of the creation of Kamma. So with the elimination of contact, there is elimination of creation of Kamma. So this is really helpful for you to understand as it relates to relationships and other things that are happening in your life. If you come together with another individual, you and that individual coming together, there's a certain Kamma that is created. There's a certain result because you've chosen this life partner, or you've chosen this friend, or you've chosen a certain place to live, and certain neighbors and certain things. When you make certain choices, there's going to be a result to those decisions. So when you come in contact with another individual, you're starting to produce Kamma at that point. So if you understand that, then you understand here that to eliminate the creation of Kamma, you can just eliminate contact. By eliminating contact, you eliminate the creation of Kamma. So where this becomes beneficial is that, say you enter into a room and there's an individual there and they start yelling at you and they're angry and they're hostile and they're argumentative and bitter. Well, maybe in the past, before you understood the path to enlightenment, you might have been angry, hostile, and bitter right back, right? But that's just going to create unwholesome Kamma because of the unwise decision to use things like wrong intention, wrong speech, and wrong action. You're going to now be producing unwholesome Kamma. But if you understand that the creation of Kamma is based on contact, and you walk into this room and someone's being bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive with you, you might choose to just turn around and leave. Because when you walk out, there's no more Kamma created. You've eliminated contact. So there's no more creation of Kamma in that situation. Then this sixth aspect of Kamma that the Buddha is describing here is that the Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Kamma. So when you're learning that core central teaching of the Buddha, which is the Eightfold Path, you're learning how to produce wise decisions that would lead to the production of wholesome Kamma and extinguish all your unwholesome Kamma. Because this path to enlightenment, the way that it works is that prior to understanding this path to enlightenment, it's like we're putting mud into our garden hose, and we're constantly putting mud into our garden hose. It's unwise decisions that we're making from the past, and we're shoving all this mud into our garden hose. And then at some point, we maybe learn about these teachings and we start getting on the path to enlightenment. This is like hooking up the garden hose to a faucet. And now if you're coming to classes regularly, if you're reading books regularly, if you're meditating, if you're seeking guidance from a teacher, you're opening up this faucet of clear water wider and wider and wider. And now as this clear water is coming through the garden hose, it's going to now spit mud as you're trying to clean up this unwholesome Kamma. These unwise decisions that you made in the past to put mud into your garden hose, even though you've turned on the clean water, it's going to spit mud for a while. And then eventually you're going to get some clean water. But then it's going to spit some more mud. And then it's going to spit some clean water. And then more and more, the clean water is going to get more and more significant. And there's going to be less and less mud until eventually you get to the point where it's nothing but clean water coming out the end of the garden hose. Well, it's the Eightfold Path that is going to help you to do that. By you learning, reflecting, and practicing the Eightfold Path, more and more you're making wise decisions so that you can now insert more and more wise decisions into your life and clear out the mud from the past and unwise decisions that you made in the past that are leading to unwholesome results. One of the ways that I explain this is through a couple of examples. One example might be if you live in a country where you fill out tax forms to report to the government how much money you make, and then you need to pay taxes based on what you report. Let's just say 3 years ago, before you knew about these teachings, you might have lied on these tax forms. And now, 3 years later, because of that unwise decision 3 years ago, now in the present moment, you're experiencing unwholesome karma where the government is now sending you a letter and saying you owe them $5,000. You owe them maybe $3,000 from the original taxes and maybe $2,000 of interest and penalties, right? And now you get this particular letter. Well, without the wisdom of the Eightfold Path, what you might have decided to do in that situation is try to lie some more, try to be deceptive some more. But that's just going to produce unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results in the future. But if you understand the Eightfold Path and you understand the natural law of Kamma, and you understand that this unwholesome karma coming back to you now in the present moment is based on an unwise decision from the past, now in the present moment, you can make wise decisions through the Eightfold Path that is going to extinguish this unwholesome karma. So maybe you call up the government, you contact them, maybe you tell them that you don't have the money, but you accept full responsibility for what's occurred and that you would like to work out some kind of payment plan. And then in this situation, they might be more than willing to work that out with you. And you're deciding to now practice the Eightfold Path, putting wise decisions into your life that's going to ultimately extinguish this unwholesome karma from the past. And this is what you would like to do with all the various decisions in your life related to your relationships and everything else. Here's another example that I can provide for you. At one point in my life, I was actually quite angry and quite bitter and quite harsh and hostile with various people. One of the people that I was angry and hostile towards was my wife. And I did a lot of unwise things in our relationship. Well, at some point, I ultimately got these teachings and found these teachings and discovered that, okay, this is what I'm now going to do, is I'm going to train my mind to move to this enlightened mental state and understand these natural laws. Well, even though I had changed the way that I functioned, that I was no longer being bitter and harsh and hostile with my wife, she was still being hostile and bitter with me because that was my unwise decisions from the past. And now my unwholesome karma was coming to me, that I had talked to her in very unwise ways. And now for about 1.5 years or so, she was still talking to me in those same ways that I used to talk to her. And I needed to extinguish this. And the way that I needed to do that was by remaining patient, by remaining calm, by talking to her politely and respectfully, and slowly but surely even helping to offer her some teachings to help her see where she was having some difficulties. Over 1.5 year period, we got to the point where she no longer was bitter and harsh with me, and I was no longer bitter and harsh with her. And now it's been several years, and we haven't had any bitter or harsh words towards each other at all. It's only been loving kindness and compassion and generosity. We've been in a very healthy relationship for many, many years now. And that is because we extinguished our unwholesome karma, our unwise decisions. We arose this wisdom of things like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and we started practicing that with each other. And now we both trained our mind to the point where we've extinguished our unwise decisions. So now we just have a very loving relationship with each other. So this is what you're going to need to do in your life in order to eliminate unwholesome karma, is realize that there's going to be some unwholesome karma coming back to you. But now practicing the Eightfold Path, the way that I teach it in Volume 1, Chapter 5, that you can see in detail based on the words of the Buddha, how to practice the Eightfold Path in its entirety. And then that is what's going to ultimately lead to your enlightenment, because that's the core central teaching that everything else plugs into. And now when you get an elongated period of time of having practiced the Eightfold Path, you will then extinguish all your unwholesome karma and get to the point where you're only experiencing wholesome results, where all your decisions are based in wisdom, based on the universal truths, based on the natural law of Kamma, based on dependent origination, based on all these natural laws of existence. You're only making wiser and wiser and wiser choices. And now as an enlightened being, you're not experiencing any unwholesome results because you've extinguished all your unwise decisions. You've got this faucet wide open, and it's been putting pure water into your garden hose for multiple years, and you've completely flushed out all the mud. And now with that wisdom of the natural law of Kamma, you're only making wise decisions. Therefore, these decisions are leading to wholesome results. So that's what the Buddha is explaining to you here as he's describing the 6 aspects of Kamma to be understood. And then he shares here that having understood this penetrative spiritual life to be the elimination of unwholesome Kamma, that it's important for you to understand that what you're doing on this journey to enlightenment is you're working to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma. Some of the unwholesome Kamma that an individual has in the unenlightened state is they still have craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind, these 3 poisons or 3 unwholesome roots or 3 fires. They have those 10 fetters in the mind because we lacked wisdom of how to actually train the mind in these natural laws of existence. So what we're doing on this path is we're training our mind, we're awakening to this wisdom, and part of what we're doing is the meditation and all the other factors of the Eightfold Path in order to extinguish these unwise decisions from the past where the mind's held on to these pollutions of craving, anger, and ignorance, or these 10 fetters. And now when you apply effort to arise energy to be motivated and have initiative and encouragement and enthusiasm towards learning, reflecting, and practicing, you can extinguish all your unwholesome Kamma through the Eightfold Path by developing your wisdom, your moral conduct, and your mental discipline. And this is what you're working to accomplish to get to that point where you only experience wholesome results coming back to you. So let me see what questions you guys might have on this chapter. Again, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and I will see your questions. And then if you're in Zoom, you're welcome to raise your hand electronically and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here, so let's move on to the next chapter. And I'll just remind those of you in Zoom, if you guys would like to read, you're welcome to read any of these chapters at any time. So chapter 2, it's titled 3 Causes for the Origination of Unwholesome Kamma. This is where the Buddha is going to explain to you how you create unwholesome Kamma. It's contact that creates Kamma, but now he's going to explain to you the causes of creating unwholesome Kamma. You need to have contact, but here he's going to explain to you the causes of what leads to the creation of this unwholesome Kamma. Monks, there are these 3 causes for the origination of unwholesome Kamma. What 3? 1. Craving, desire, greed, attachment is a cause for the origination of unwholesome Kamma. 2. Anger, hatred, ill will is a cause for the origination of unwholesome Kamma. 3. Ignorance, delusion, unknowing of true reality is a cause for the origination of unwholesome Kamma. Suppose, monks, seeds that are intact, unspoiled, not damaged by wind and the sun's heat, fertile, well preserved, well deposited in well prepared ground in a good field and receive proper rainfall. In this way, those seeds would grow, increase, and mature. One moment, everyone. All right. So too, any unwholesome Kamma, monks, created through craving, born of craving, caused by craving, originated by craving.
What is this, man? What is this?
Okay, that's what I thought. Let me just do something here. Okay, for all of you guys on live stream, we just had some people coming into our Zoom here. All right, so let me just pick it up where we were. So too, any unwholesome Kamma, monks, created through craving, born of craving, caused by craving, originated by craving, ripens wherever the individual is reborn. Wherever that unwholesome Kamma ripens, it is there that one experiences its results, either in this very life or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. So too, any unwholesome Kamma created through anger, born of anger, caused by anger, originated by anger, ripens wherever the individual is reborn. Wherever that unwholesome Kamma ripens, it is there that one experiences its results, either in this very life or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. So too, Any unwholesome Kamma created through ignorance, born of ignorance, caused by ignorance, originated by ignorance, ripens wherever the individual is reborn. Wherever that unwholesome Kamma ripens, it is there that one experiences its results, either in this very life or in the next rebirth or on some subsequent occasion. These are the three causes for the origination of unwholesome Kamma. Okay, so here the Buddha is explaining that craving, anger, and ignorance are the causes of unwholesome Kamma. If you've learned the foundational teachings with me through the group learning program or through any of the foundational courses or retreats that I teach, I introduce students and explain the detail of the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires of craving, anger, and ignorance, where you're understanding what craving is your own selfish desires, longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. And if you get the objects of your affection, you get pleasant feelings. But then if you don't get the objects of your affection, you get angry or frustrated or irritated. So the mind is chasing and chasing and chasing, thinking that some object outside of yourself is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind in the unenlightened state will just chase and chase and chase with longing and yearning and thinking that if it just acquires this thing, that then it can be happy or excited or elated. But then when the mind doesn't acquire that thing, it then experiences the painful feelings, which includes anger, or hatred, or ill will. It also includes sadness or frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, things of this nature. So when there's craving in the mind becomes somewhat selfish. It's holding on to things tightly, and it oftentimes is making decisions through that craving. And when you're making decisions through your own selfish desires, through craving, then you're going to make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. And when you're making those unwise decisions, you're going to experience those unwholesome results at some point, whether it's in this life, in the next life, or some subsequent occasion, like the Buddha is explaining. So what you're doing on this path to enlightenment, among other things, is you're working to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, because as long as your mind is making decisions through craving, desire, attachment, it's going to lead to unwholesome results. And then if you're making decisions through anger, hatred, or ill will, this is also going to produce unwholesome results. If you've ever been angry or had hatred or ill will or frustration or agitation, and you've made decisions through that, then you know that it's led to unwholesome results. Where you've been bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive to people, it's led to unwholesome results. You can independently verify what I'm sharing with you based on your own experiences. And where all of this is coming from is the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. Sometimes we refer to this as confusion or misunderstanding or delusion. This is where the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. So because of ignorance, there's this craving and anger that continues to persist in the mind. And as long as the mind has craving, anger, and ignorance and making decisions through these, it will make unwise decisions that produces unwholesome results. But when you arise wisdom, now you can antidote that ignorance or that unknowing of true reality. And now you can learn how to eliminate craving, and you can learn how to eliminate anger. And now you can liberate the mind from this struggles and difficulties with discontentedness in the mind and certain struggles and difficulties in life, getting to a point where you've completely eradicated craving, anger, and ignorance, and now you're making wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. And the Buddha is going to share some of that with us in today's chapters. But rather than get ahead of ourselves, I would like to just stop here and see if you guys have any questions on the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots or the three fires as it relates to the creation of unwholesome Kamma. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. I'm going to need to just adjust a couple of things here in Zoom so that our participants can now participate more easily. Just give me one moment. See if I can do this. There we go. Okay, those of you guys in Zoom, you should be able to now raise your hand and unmute and things like that, and use the comments as well. So let me take a look and see in YouTube here. It looks like we have a question. Okay. The question is, you are very lucky with your wife. How about animosity from parents who always want to overpower and control children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc.? So it's important to understand that I'm not lucky about my wife. This isn't luck. There's no such thing as good luck or bad luck. The results that I'm experiencing with my wife came from certain decisions that I made. I made decisions to improve my own wisdom and get to the point where I understood these teachings very deeply. And then I made decisions to then help her and guide her along the way as well, to be able to experience improved results in her life as well. I'm sorry, I see something here on Facebook and YouTube that I need to correct as well. Sorry about this, just having a little technical things going on here. All right, so it's important to understand that there's no luck, right? It's all about the results of your decisions. So when you're making certain decisions, you're going to experience certain results. So I wasn't lucky with my wife. I wasn't experiencing good luck. I experienced the results of my decisions. And then as it relates to other people in your life, whether it's parents or grandparents, great-grandparents, if people are putting pressure on you to make decisions in a certain way, there's ways for you to extinguish this unwholesome Kamma. That by you now being in a family where parents or grandparents are putting pressure on you, if that's what you're experiencing, there's ways to extinguish this. So this is where you learn generally in a class like this, and then you end up then coming to learn with your teacher on a personal basis, so that you can then understand how to apply these teachings in a case-by-case basis based on the individual situations that you're having. So if you're having certain challenges in life and you need to improve what you're experiencing, you would like to reach out to your teacher through personal guidance, and then we will listen to what it is that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and then we will provide you the guidance that you need in order to then apply these teachings more readily in a way that can improve the results that you're experiencing. But with a lack of wisdom of these natural laws of existence and the natural law of Kamma, you're not going to be able to then apply these in a situation with your parents or grandparents or other people in a way that is going to produce wholesome results. So feel free to reach out to schedule a personal guidance session and other methods that I use in order to provide personal guidance, because we would need to teach and make sure that you understand on a case-by-case basis of each situation how to get to the point where you can now improve the results of your decisions. Because it's not going to be luck that's going to improve the results that you experience. It's going to be based on certain choices and decisions that you make. All right, let's take a look at Facebook and see if Facebook has any questions. I'm not seeing any questions there. So let's go ahead on to the next chapter, which is chapter 3. All right, so let me just share my screen here. I'm just having a few things happening here with people coming into Zoom, so I've had to shut down Zoom a few times. I would like to just open that back up for the people who are here in Zoom in case you guys would like to ask questions or raise your hand or volunteer, anything like that. So let's see, we'll go ahead and move to sharing our screen here so that the folks in Zoom can see the chapter 3. Okay. All right, so so you guys in Zoom should now be able to see each of the chapters. So this one, chapter 3, is titled 3 Causes for the Origination of Wholesome and Unwholesome Kamma, Another Discourse. Monks, There are these three causes for the origination of unwholesome Kamma. What three? 1. Craving, desire, greed, attachment arises with reference to things in the past that are the basis for craving and desire. 2. Craving, desire, greed, attachment arises with reference to things in the future that are the basis for craving and desire. 3. Craving, desire, greed, attachment arises with reference to things presently existing that are the basis for craving and desire. In how, monks, does craving arise with reference to things in the past that are the basis for craving and desire? One thinks about and mentally examines things in the past that are the basis for craving and desire. As one does so, craving arises. When craving springs up, one is fettered by those things. The mental obsession is what I call the fetter. It is in this way that craving arises with reference to things in the past that are the basis for craving and desire. And how does craving arise with reference to things in the future that are the basis for craving and desire? One thinks and desires. As one does so, craving arises. When craving springs up, one is fettered by those things. The mental obsession is what I call the fetter. It is in this way that craving arises with reference to things in the future that are the basis for craving and desire. And how does craving arise with reference to things presently existing that are the basis for craving and desire? One thinks about and mentally examines things presently existing that are the basis for craving and desire. As one does so, craving arises. When craving springs up, one is fettered by those things. The mental obsession is what I call the fetter. It is in this way that craving arises with reference to things presently existing that are the basis for craving and desire. These are the three causes for the origination of unwholesome Kamma. There are, monks, these three causes for the origination of wholesome Kamma. What three? 1. Craving, desire, greed, attachment does not arise with reference to things in the past that are the basis for craving and desire. 2. Craving, desire, greed, attachment does not arise with reference to things in the future that are the basis for craving and desire. 3. Craving, desire, greed, attachment does not arise with reference to things presently existing that are the basis for craving and desire. And how, monks, does craving not arise with reference to things in the past that are the basis for craving and desire? One understands the future result of things in the past that are the basis for craving and desire. Having understood the future result, one avoids it. Having avoided it, one becomes free from strong feelings in the mind. And having pierced through with wisdom, one sees. It is in this way that craving does not arise with reference to things in the past that are the basis for craving and desire. And how, monks, does craving not arise with reference to things in the future that are the basis for craving and desire? One understands the future result of things in the future that are the basis for craving and desire. Having understood the future result, one avoids it. Having avoided it, one becomes free from strong feelings in the mind. And having pierced through with wisdom, one sees. It is in this way that craving does not arise with reference to things in the future that are the basis for craving and desire. And how, monks, does craving not arise with reference to things presently existing that are the basis for craving and desire? One understands the future result of things presently existing that are the basis for craving and desire. Having understood the future result, one avoids it. Having avoided it, one becomes free from strong feelings in the mind. And having pierced through with wisdom, one sees. It is in this way that craving does not arise with reference to things presently existing that are the basis for craving and desire. These are the three causes for the origination of wholesome Kamma. Okay, so this chapter is really focusing in on craving, desire, attachment, that mental longing, strong eagerness, and talking about how there can be the origination of unwholesome karma when there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind based on things from the past, the future, and presently. So if in the present moment you're thinking about the past and you're craving and longing and yearning, say there were certain pleasurable things or certain painful things that occurred in the past, and this is producing craving, desire, attachment in the present moment, this craving is arising in the mind based on things that the mind is obsessed about from the past, or perhaps the future, things that you want in the future. The mind is longing and yearning for things in the future, or in the present moment. Anytime craving, desire, attachment arises in the mind, it's going to produce aspects of mind that are then going to then make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. So what the Buddha is explaining here is he's explaining to you here and in other places that as this craving starts to spring up in the mind, that you cut this off and let it go. You don't allow the mind to dwell in that craving, desire, attachment. So if in the present moment you're starting to long and yearn for things in the past or in the future or in the present moment where you see craving arising or you see mental obsession arising, the Buddha is calling this a fetter, which a fetter is like a ball and chain and a shackle around your leg, keeping you prisoner. Where these fetters, particularly this craving, desire, attachment, this mental obsession, is keeping you trapped in this unenlightened state. It's keeping you to the point where you're no longer going to be experiencing this continued ability to maintain your peace and joy because the mind is fettered by this craving. The mind is having this mental obsession. And what you would like to do when you see that occurring is cut it off and let it go so that it no longer is arising. But it will arise over time as you're transforming your mind, be it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes you to get to enlightenment. There's going to be craving that arises in the mind. And as you observe that and as you notice that, cut that off and let it go so that you can get liberated from these strong feelings. And that's what the Buddha is explaining down here, that the way to get to this wholesome Kamma is to not allow craving to arise. That when craving does not arise based in reference to things in the past, the future, or in the present moment, then you can get to a point where there's only wholesome results because you're no longer allowing craving to pollute the mind and you're no longer making decisions through those cravings. So let me see if you guys have any questions on anything that I've shared here in this particular chapter. I would like to just apologize for those of you guys that were in Zoom. You might have moved to YouTube or Facebook by this point, but I realized I had my mute on, so I've turned that off now so that now if you decide to come back to Zoom, you will be able to hear me. With the people coming in and out of Zoom, I had to shut down a few things that I didn't realize that things were still shut down. All right, so looking at YouTube and Facebook to see if there's any questions. I don't see any there, and there aren't any in Zoom either. So we'll just move to chapter 4, which is titled 3 Causes for the Origination of Wholesome Kamma. Now the Buddha is going to introduce you to the 3 wholesome roots, where the previous chapters were helping you to understand what causes unwholesome Kamma, and he's describing craving, anger, and ignorance. Here he's going to explain to you now the wholesome roots, since you already should have an understanding of the unwholesome roots. Monks, there are these 3 causes for the origination of wholesome Kamma. What 3? 1. Non-craving or generosity is a cause for the origination of wholesome Kamma. 2. Non-anger or loving kindness is a cause for the origination of wholesome Kamma. 3. Non-ignorance or wisdom is a cause for the origination of wholesome Kamma. Suppose, monks, there are seeds that are intact, unspoiled, not damaged by wind in the sun's heat, fertile, well preserved. Then a man would burn them in a fire, reduce them to ashes, and the ashes would blow in a strong wind, or let them be carried away by a swift current of a river. In this way, those seeds would be cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, obliterated, so that they are no more subject to future arising. So too, any Kamma that is created through non-craving or generosity, born of non-craving, caused by non-craving, originated by non-craving, is abandoned when craving has vanished. It is cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, obliterated, so that it is no longer subject to future arising of unwholesome Kamma. So too, any Kamma that is created through non-anger or loving kindness, born out of non-anger, caused by non-anger, originated by non-anger, is abandoned when anger has vanished. It is cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, obliterated, so that it is no longer subject to future arising of unwholesome Kamma. So too, any Kamma that is created through non-ignorance or wisdom, born of non-ignorance, caused of non-ignorance, originated by non-ignorance, is abandoned when ignorance has vanished. It is cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, obliterated, so that it is no longer subject to future arising of unwholesome Kamma. These monks are the three causes for the origination of wholesome Kamma. So here, it's understanding the exact opposites of craving, anger, and ignorance. Those exact opposites are generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And this is what I teach as part of the foundational program, that when you're studying the three poisons or three unwholesome roots or three fires, I'm also teaching you about the three wholesome roots. And also when I teach you about the natural law of Kamma in the foundational programs, I'm also teaching you about how to generate wholesome Kamma through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So you can see this in reality, that if you look at situations where you had craving, anger, and ignorance, and you made decisions through that, it produced unwholesome results for you. But in situations where you've made decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, then it's going to produce wholesome results for you. And what you would like to do is more and more cut off and eliminate the unwholesome roots of craving, anger, and ignorance, and arise generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. What you're essentially doing is uprooting the unwholesome conditions, those craving, anger, and ignorance. You're uprooting that out of the mind, and you're bringing in this generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, so that more and more you're functioning through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And when you're functioning through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, that's where you'll see wholesome results. But there's going to be this gradual transformation that is occurring in the mind, and that's why you're going to still get the garden hose spitting mud from time to time. So you're going to need to get to a point where you only have wise decisions based in generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom going into the garden hose or going into your life. And then more and more, when you do that over an extended period of time, that's where you'll see all the wholesome results for yourself coming out through your wise decisions as a result of your decisions. So let me see what questions you guys have on this. You can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, and I'll be able to see those. Okay, so we'll move on to chapter 5. It looks like the folks who are in Zoom moved over to YouTube. Sorry for that, needing to deal with the technical issues of people coming into our Zoom session. As I mentioned earlier, Zoom is back open and operational for anybody who would like to use Zoom. So here, chapter number 5 is titled Inconceivable Matters. Monks, there are these 4 inconceivable matters that one should not try to conceive. One who tries to conceive them would reap either madness or frustration. What for? 1. The experiences of the Buddhas is an inconceivable matter that one should not try to conceive. One who tries to conceive it would reap either madness or frustration. 2. The experiences of one in the jhanas is an inconceivable matter that one should not try to conceive. One who tries to conceive it would reap either madness or frustration. 3. The exact result of Kamma is an inconceivable matter that one should not try to conceive. One who tries to conceive it would reap either madness or frustration. 4. Speculation about the world is an inconceivable matter that one should not try to conceive. One who tries to conceive it would reap either madness or frustration. These are the four inconceivable matters that one should not try to conceive. One who tries to conceive them would reap either madness or frustration. So here the Buddha is giving you four things that you shouldn't try to assume. You shouldn't try to assume that you understand these things, but instead realize that it's not possible for you to fully understand these things, that they're inconceivable. And if you try to conceive them and you try to deeply understand them and penetrate them to exactly, you would reap either madness or frustration. The first one is the experiences of a Buddha. What a Buddha goes through in order to get to enlightenment can only be understood fully by that person, by the actual Buddha. So the Buddha going off for 6 years to get to enlightenment, what was going on in his mind and what allowed him to discover these teachings, it's inconceivable to an average person. A Buddha would understand what a Buddha experiences, but an average person wouldn't be able to understand that. So the Buddha is saying, don't even try to figure it out. Don't even try to conceive it. Don't even try to necessarily understand what a Buddha experiences in order to get to enlightenment, because this would reap either madness or frustration in your own mind, right? The ultimate goal is to learn the teachings of a Buddha, not to deeply understand his own personal experience. You can ask certain questions and you can learn certain things about the life of a Buddha, but in terms of deeply understanding all the different experiences that a Buddha has had, this is inconceivable to the average person and would reap either madness or frustration if you tried to understand it. Number two, the experiences of one in the jhanas is an inconceivable matter. So the jhanas are those four preliminary phases that the mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. And then from there, you go to the second, third, and fourth stage where the mind's actually enlightened when you're in that fourth stage of enlightenment. So what the Buddha is saying is if you're not in the jhanas, if you're not experiencing the jhanas, you shouldn't try to conceive what the jhanas are actually like, because this would reap either madness or frustration. The Buddha describes the jhanas, and anybody who's experienced the jhanas can explain what their experience has been. But for somebody to deeply understand that, who's not experiencing the jhanas, it would be very challenging for them to do that. You can study it, you can try to understand it to a certain degree so that as you're experiencing the jhanas, you will know that you're experiencing the jhanas. But in terms of deeply understanding it, you wouldn't actually deeply understand it until you're actually experiencing it yourself. It's kind of like, could you explain chocolate ice cream if you've never tasted chocolate ice cream? You would find it very difficult to understand what chocolate ice cream tastes like. Even if somebody explains it to you and tries to describe it to you, you would reap madness or frustration trying to understand what chocolate ice cream tastes like if you've never actually tasted chocolate ice cream. So the way to find out what chocolate ice cream tastes like is just to taste chocolate ice cream, and then you'll know. So the same thing with the jhanas, is the way that you'll know what the jhanas are fully is to experience them. But up until that time, you can study them, you can learn about them so that you'll know how to get to the jhanas. And once you're experiencing the jhanas, you'll know that you're experiencing them. But in terms of deeply understanding them, you wouldn't understand them until you're actually experiencing them. And if you tried to deeply understand them and penetrate it so deeply, the Buddha is saying it would lead to either madness or frustration. Then the whole reason why this chapter is actually in this book to begin with is number 3. The Buddha says the exact result of Kamma is an inconceivable matter. And I certainly agree with what the Buddha is sharing here and in all of his other teachings as well, is that you can generally study the natural law of Kamma, and you should, and that's what you need to do in order to get to enlightenment, where you can understand this cause and effect or this action and result and what's leading to certain wholesome or unwholesome results. Things like the Buddha shares that if you repeatedly kill over and over and over again, that you're going to have a shortened lifespan. Or other things like this, where he talks about, if you have certain types of speech or certain types of actions, it's going to generally lead to these types of things. But the exact result of Kamma, it can't be conceived because there's so many factors and so many variables involved. You can't really conceive exactly the result of one particular action, of exactly what's going to come about, that you can't perceive that. And otherwise you would reap madness or frustration. there's certain things that we can discuss about certain things that lead to rebirth in hell or the animal realm or afflicted spirits or the human realm or heavenly realm. We can talk about these things in general. But if you tried to get to the exact, that's where you would have either madness or frustration. So you would like to learn this natural law of Kamma in a certain level of detail, but then understand that you're not going to be penetrating this. Like, if I steal this pencil from my teacher, what is the exact thing that's going to happen to me? That is not conceivable. But we know that if you steal, that you're doing that out of craving, desire, attachment, and if, as you are discovered, you're going to be found to be undependable, you're going to not be trustworthy. If your teacher found out, perhaps they wouldn't trust you any further. Maybe you would get bad grades on your reports and things like this. So there's some general things that we can talk about like that, but you wouldn't be able to know exactly, right? So that's what the Buddha is explaining here. And then number 4, speculation about the world is an inconceivable matter. What this is like is what we might today call conspiracy theories. That if you held all these different conspiracy theories about the world, where you were speculating about how things are happening in the world, this is going to lead to your madness or your frustration. That what you would like to get to is you would like to get to truth. You would like to get to wisdom, where you can independently verify something. But if you're just working based on speculation or conspiracy, if you ever have talked with anybody who's into that kind of thing, you can see that their mind is experiencing madness and or frustration. And this is because of what the Buddha is explaining, is that you shouldn't be just speculating about the world and just making assumptions and guesses, but instead you should be looking for the truth, and that's what's going to lead to your clarity about things that are going on in the world. So things like the universal truth of impermanence, or the universal truth of discontentedness, or the universal truth of non-self, and the Four Noble Truths, and all these other teachings where the Buddha is explaining the natural laws of existence to you. You can learn them, you can reflect on them to independently verify them, and you can practice them so that now you get to wisdom. You're no longer having speculation about the world because you know with 100% certainty how the world is functioning around you. So don't speculate about the world, but instead penetrate with wisdom to be able to see the truth for yourself. That way you can avoid the madness and frustration if you dived into conspiracy theories and all these kinds of things. So let me see what questions you guys have related to this chapter. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here. I'll just take a little glass of water. All right, so that should prepare me for the next several chapters. We're moving to chapter 6, which is titled 10 Courses of Unwholesome Kamma. This is where you're going to now see how the Buddha teaches things like the 5 precepts and other teachings, and how he connects it to Kamma, so that you can see that he's really been teaching you about the natural law of Kamma all the way through your learning and development on the path to enlightenment. That if you've been studying things like the 5 precepts, you can see here that he's now connecting it to Kamma. Here it starts out with purity by body, kunda, is threefold. Impurity by speech is threefold. Impurity by mind is threefold. And how, kunda, is impurity by body threefold. Here, one destroys life. He is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. 2. He takes what is not given. He steals the wealth and property of others in the village or forest. 3. He engages in sexual misconduct. He has sexual relations with women who are protected by their mother, father, mother and father, brother, sister, or relatives, who are protected by their teachings, who have a husband whose violation entails a penalty, or even with one already engaged. It is in this way that impurity by body is threefold. And how, kunda, is impurity by speech fourfold. 1. Here, someone speaks falsehood. If he is summoned to a council, to an assembly, to his relative's presence, to his club, or to the court, and questioned as a witness thus, "So, good man, Tell what you know. Then, not knowing, he says, I know. Or knowing, he says, I do not know. Not seeing, he says, I see. Or seeing, he says, I do not see. Thus, he knowingly speaks falsehood for his own benefit, or for the other's benefit, or for some insignificant worldly benefit. He speaks argumentatively. Having heard something here, he repeats it elsewhere in order to divide those people from these. Sorry, let me say that again. 2. He speaks argumentatively. Having heard something here, he repeats it elsewhere in order to divide those people from these. Or having heard something elsewhere, he repeats it to these people in order to divide them from those. Thus, he is one who divides those who are united, a creator of divisions, one who enjoys separation, rejoices in separation, finds pleasure in separation, a speaker of words that create separation. 3. He speaks harshly. He speaks such words as are rough, hard, hurtful to others, offensive to others, bordering on anger, unconducive to concentration. 4. He indulges in idle chatter. He speaks at improper time, speaks falsely, speaks what is unbeneficial, speaks opposite to the teachings and the discipline. At an improper time, he speaks such words as are unwise, unreliable, rambling, and unbeneficial. It is in this way that impurity by speech is fourfold. And how, Kunda, is impurity by mind threefold? 1. Here, someone is full of longing or craving. He longs, craves for the wealth and property of others. Thus, oh, may what belongs to another be mine. 2. He has a mind of ill will and intentions of hate. Thus, may these beings be slain, slaughtered, cut off, destroyed, or obliterated. 3. He holds wrong view, ignorance, unknowing of true reality, and has an incorrect perspective. Thus, there is nothing gained, nothing sacrificed, nothing offered. There is no fruit or result of wholesome or unwholesome actions. There is no this world, no other world. There is no mother, no father. There are no beings spontaneously reborn. There are in the world no ascetics and Brahmins of right conduct and right practice, who, having realized this world and the other world for themselves by direct knowledge, experience, make them known to others. It is in this way that impurity by mind is threefold. These kunda are the 10 courses of unwholesome karma. It is because people engage in these 10 courses of unwholesome karma that hell, the animal realm, the realm of afflicted spirits, and other bad destinations are seen. All right, so let's go through this. When the Buddha talks about unwholesome karma, or the generation of even wholesome karma, he talks about it through bodily actions, verbal actions, and mental actions. Here, he's honing in on specific bodily actions, verbal actions, and mental actions that one can have that produces unwholesome results, and ultimately getting to rebirth down into the lower realms of hell, animal, and afflicted spirits. The Buddha never uses rebirth into the lower realms as a way to guilt, shame, or fear people into learning and practicing his teachings, because to get to enlightenment, you're actually eliminating guilt, shame, and fear, among other things. In terms of discontentedness, you're eliminating all of that. So he's not going to use guilt, shame, and fear in order to help you eliminate guilt, shame, and fear. But he's teaching the truth. He's helping you to understand the things that lead to rebirth. Because now, when you understand the things that lead to rebirth in the lower realms, you can make wiser decisions to now practice the wise moral conduct through body, speech, and mind that leads to rebirth either in the human or heavenly realm. But also, this is the same things that lead to enlightenment as well. So the goal isn't to be reborn into the human or heavenly realm. It's to get to enlightenment and escape this whole cycle of rebirth. So the same things that lead to rebirth in the human and heavenly realm are the same things that lead to enlightenment. Here he's focusing on the unwholesome karma that leads to rebirth in the lower realms. So the first three about bodily conduct or bodily actions is connecting over to the first three of the 5 precepts about destroying life, about taking what is not given, and having sexual misconduct. The 5 precepts have a lot more detail on this, and that's where I would encourage you to look in order to understand how to practice those using the words of the Buddha. And you can see this in Volume 1, Chapter 7 of the book series that I share, where you can see the original words of the Buddha. Because sometimes people translate and say that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, no intoxicants. But this isn't what he said. This makes it sound like it's black and white. This makes it sound like it's rules or commandments. This isn't going to lead to your enlightenment if you're using very rudimentary understanding of the teachings of the Buddha. He said and shared much more illuminating language than that, that's going to fully inform you of how to understand the natural law of Kamma and then how to practice it. And now here he's talking about someone who's destroying life is going to essentially lead them to rebirth into the lower realms, as well as stealing and sexual misconduct. And then the impurity by speech is fourfold. And this is what's going to lead to rebirth into the lower realms, where when one is lying, when one is having argumentative speech, when one is having harsh speech, and when one is having idle chatter. This is coming from the right speech of the Eightfold Path, where in the right speech of the Eightfold Path, that first layer of understanding that you're understanding in terms of right speech is to abandon lying, abandon slander, abandon harsh speech, and abandon frivolous speech. This is the exact same thing, just worded a little bit differently. So we understand what false speech is. We understand argumentative speech or slander or gossip. This is all going to lead to unwholesome results in one's life and rebirth into the lower realms. And then that harsh speech, right? You would like to look for your tone, your tempo, and your word choices to ensure that you're speaking gentle. You're not interested in this harsh speech. And then idle chatter or frivolous speech is speaking through craving, is that you just have a longing and a yearning to be able to speak and speak and speak and speak about pointless topics, right? That the mind is just yada, 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 yada. So if you're rambling and having unbeneficial speech, this is idle chatter or frivolous speech, and it's going to be harmful to others, and it's going to cause harm for you as well. And then mentally, what he's talking about here is craving, anger, and ignorance. He's describing it through full of longing, a mind of ill will, and holds wrong view. But this is craving, anger, and ignorance. This is mental actions that are going to lead to rebirth into the lower realms, because those beings in hell, animal, and afflicted spirits, they're functioning through craving, anger, and ignorance extensively. That's why they're there. They will have opportunities to be reborn into other realms that will improve their ability to get to enlightenment. But now that you're in the human realm and you start to understand these teachings, as you eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance, you can see the condition of your mind improving, that your life in your mind becomes more peaceful and more joyful. Your relationships become more peaceful and more joyful as you're eliminating craving, anger, and ignorance. So here, the Buddha is helping you to understand how these are going to lead you to rebirth into the lower realms, and it's producing this unwholesome karma. And that's part of that unwholesome karma is rebirth into the lower realms. But it's also producing unwholesome karma in this realm, in the human realm as well. Because when you're making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance, you're causing challenges and difficulties in your relationships and in the conversations around you and the interactions you're having around you. It's causing difficulties in your life. So what you would like to do is learn how to eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance, arising generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So let me see what questions you guys might have on this chapter. 10 courses of unwholesome karma. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions there. So let's move on to the next chapter, which is chapter 7. This is exactly the same thing that we just read, But now the Buddha is casting it into the positive, because now he's talking about it in terms of purity of body, speech, and mind. And this is what's going to produce wholesome Kamma. So I'm not sure that I need to read this entire chapter, because it's exactly the opposite of the one that we just talked about. Here, the Buddha is talking about by abandoning destruction of life, abandoning the taking of what is not given, abandoning sexual misconduct. And you're going to need to learn how to do that through the 5 precepts and through the Eightfold Path. So by abandoning that, and also abandoning the false speech, the argumentative speech, the harsh speech, and the idle chatter, that this is going to produce wholesome Kamma. And then also by making decisions through the mind that is without craving, that is without the ill will, and without ignorance, so that now you're making decisions through generosity, through loving kindness, and through wisdom, right? So this is what you would like to do. And now what the Buddha is explaining there is that by making decisions in this way, it leads to rebirth in heavenly realm, in the human realm, and other good destinations. So that's just part of the Kamma that you're experiencing as a result of practicing these 10 aspects of or 10 courses of wholesome Kamma. That yes, if you are reborn, you're going to be reborn into those realms of either human or heavenly realm. But also, if you're practicing these same things, these are the same things that are leading to improvement in this life, and it's leading you closer and closer to enlightenment. So the same things that are leading to rebirth in the heavenly realm and human realm are the same things that are also going to lead to your enlightenment in this life right now. So that's why it's important that you deeply understand these through the 5 precepts and through the Eightfold Path, so that then you can practice them in accordance to the teachings and experience the benefits as you're training your mind and practicing in that way. Okay, you guys didn't have any questions on the last one, so I doubt you have any questions on this chapter. So let's just move on to the next chapter, which is chapter 8. Here, this is where you're going to learn about new Kamma and old Kamma, right? These are the same things that I taught you in the group learning program or any of the foundational courses or retreats that I teach. I've taught you about unwholesome Kamma and wholesome Kamma, and I've taught you about new Kamma and old Kamma. But now you're seeing the details in the words of the Buddha, and you can see that what I've taught you previously is matching to what the Buddha is teaching here in his own words. So as I introduce you to it in a foundational class, I'm teaching you what you need to know based on the words of the Buddha. But now as you get into this program, you're starting to see the underlying words of the Buddha that is helping you to more fully become informed about things like wholesome and unwholesome Kamma and new and old Kamma. So here, let me share this with you based on new and old Kamma using the words of the Buddha. Monks, I will teach you new and old Kamma, the elimination of unwholesome Kamma, and the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Kamma. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. In what, monks, is old Kamma? The eye is old Kamma, to be seen as generated and created by volition, choices, decisions, as something to be felt. The ear is old Kamma, to be seen as generated and created by volition, as something to be felt. The nose is old Kamma, to be seen as generated and created by volition, as something to be felt. The tongue is old Kamma, to be seen as generated and created by volition, as something to be felt. The body is old Kamma, to be seen as generated and created by volition, as something to be felt. The mind is old Kamma, to be seen as generated and created by volition, as something to be felt. This is called old Kamma. And what, monks, is new Kamma? Whatever action one does now by body, speech, or mind, this is called new Kamma. And what, monks, is the elimination of unwholesome Kamma? When one reaches liberation through the elimination of unwholesome bodily action, verbal action, and mental action, this is called the elimination of unwholesome Kamma. And what, monks, is the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Kamma? It is this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Thus, monks, I have taught old Kamma. I have taught new Kamma. I have taught the elimination of unwholesome Kamma. I have taught the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Kamma. Whatever should be done, monks, by a compassionate teacher out of compassion for his disciples, aspiring for their welfare, that I have done for you. These are the feet of trees, monks. These are empty huts. Meditate, monks. Do not be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instruction to you. So here the Buddha is explaining new and old Kamma. And let's go through what the Buddha is sharing, and then I will help you to be able to see this in your own life as well. Here, when he's talking about old Kamma, what he's talking about are decisions that you made in the past that you're experiencing right now in the present moment. So decisions that we made in our past lives have led to this rebirth in the human realm right now. It's an ideal existence in the human realm, but ultimately you would like to get out of this cycle of rebirth. So the bodily faculties, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself, these 6 sense bases, the reason why we've taken up this body is based on decisions that we've made in the past, in our past lives, that we didn't get to enlightenment in our past life. So that's why we have this life here. And now we have the opportunity in this life to get to enlightenment so that we don't take up another life. So we've been in this countless cycle of continuous being reborn over and over and over and over and over again. So that's our old Kamma. We can't go back and change those decisions in the past. All we can do is now create new Kamma. This new Kamma is the decisions that we're making right now that are going to affect us in the future. So we can make decisions now that is called new Kamma. And we would like to do that through the elimination of unwholesome Kamma. And that's what the Buddha is saying here, is that by eliminating the unwholesome bodily, verbal, and mental actions, we can eliminate our unwholesome Kamma. And the way that we eliminate our bodily, verbal, and mental actions that are unwholesome is to eliminate unwise decisions. The way that we get to wise decision making is the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Kamma is through the Eightfold Path. By learning and practicing the Eightfold Path, we now gain wisdom that leads us to making wiser and wiser choices. We flush out all that old Kamma that is unwholesome. We flush out all that mud out of the garden hose from our old decisions. Our old unwise decisions get flushed out by us practicing the Eightfold Path on a consistent long-term basis. And now we extinguish our unwholesome Kamma by only producing new Kamma based in wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. But the challenge is that your mind has a certain amount of craving, anger, and ignorance in it right now. So while you're trying to shut down your craving, anger, and ignorance and arise generosity and loving kindness, you're still going to be making some unwise decisions along the way. This is normal. So what you're doing is more and more, you're ramping down your craving, anger, and ignorance until you get to completely nothing. And you're ramping up your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And over time, you will see this gradual transformation in the mind where eventually you won't have any craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind. You're only making wise decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. It's the Eightfold Path that is going to help you to be able to do that. The Eightfold Path is that core central teaching. So then the Buddha here at the end, he basically encourages his students to meditate, because that's what's going to lead to the elimination of craving, anger, and ignorance. That breathing mindfulness meditation is leading to the elimination of craving. You're arising the mindfulness and concentration, which is part of the Eightfold Path, but you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment by practicing breathing mindfulness meditation. And also generosity, because with craving, the mind is very selfish. It's holding on to things. So when you're practicing giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation, without any expectation of anything in return, you're training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, along with breathing mindfulness meditation. And then you're also practicing loving kindness meditation in order to then be able to go out into the world through your intention, speech, and actions, and now practice loving kindness, this goodwill, this genuine interest in seeing other beings be well. So these two meditations are helping you to eliminate craving and anger. And you're gaining this wisdom of how to practice breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. So now consistently you can be doing that along with all the other factors of the Eightfold Path. So that's why the Buddha is encouraging his students here at the end of this discourse to make sure that they're meditating, because that's ultimately what's going to help you accomplish the elimination of all unwholesome Kamma that is coming back to you. There's a discourse of the Buddha that I'm pretty sure is in this particular book where he talks about breathing mindfulness meditation as being the highest quality of wholesome Kamma that you could actually generate. And loving kindness meditation is the second highest quality of wholesome Kamma that you could generate. Because when you're doing those things, you're working on eliminating craving and you're working on eliminating anger. And that's the best thing that you could be doing in order to generate wholesome Kamma. Because by you knocking down and obliterating and eliminating craving and anger, you're now going to be making wiser and wiser decisions in the world, not making them through craving and anger. And that's why the Buddha considers them the highest quality of Kamma that you could produce. And now through making the wise decisions to regularly meditate, you're now going to be producing more and more wholesome Kamma. So let me see what questions you guys have on this chapter, if anything at all. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here. So let's move on to the next chapter. Here you can see all the things that I wrote to further help you. So this is chapter 9. And here this is titled, This Body is Old Kamma, right? So this body that you currently are inhabiting is Kamma from the past, your old Kamma. Monks, this body is not yours, nor does it belong to others. It is old Kamma, to be seen as generated and created by volition, choices, decisions, as something to be felt. As something to be felt. I'm sorry, I just had another technical glitch over here with Zoom. Okay. Let me just get Zoom started back up for a moment here. Okay. So let me start this over. This body is old Kamma. Monks, this body is not yours, nor does it belong to others. It is old Kamma, to be seen as generated and created by volition, choices, decisions, as something to be felt. Therein, monks, the instructed noble disciple attends carefully and closely to dependent origination itself. Thus, when this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the elimination of this, that is eliminated. That is, with ignorance as condition, volitional formations come to be. With volitional formations as condition, consciousness. With consciousness as condition, name and form. With name and form as condition, the six sense bases. With the six sense bases as condition, contact. With contact as condition, feeling. With feeling as condition, craving. With craving as condition, clinging. With clinging as condition, existence. With existence as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of discontentedness. But with the remainderless fading away and elimination of ignorance, unknowing of true reality, comes elimination of volitional formations, choices, decisions. With the elimination of volitional formations, elimination of consciousness. All aspects of dependent origination are inserted here. With the elimination of birth, aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair is eliminated. Such is the elimination of this whole mass of discontentedness. So here, the Buddha is referencing dependent origination to help you understand what is causing this old Kamma for you to keep taking up this body over and over again. So this body is not yours. It doesn't belong to you, and it doesn't belong to others. It's old Kamma that's been generated based on decisions that you've made in the past and something that you're experiencing right now in the present moment. And the reason why you're experiencing that is because we haven't understood the dismantling of dependent origination. That in the Four Noble Truths, when you first start off in your foundation to understand what's causing discontentedness, the Buddha gives you this window into dependent origination that helps you to understand that these discontent feelings that you're experiencing is based on craving or clinging, the mind longing and yearning. And that's really kind of showing you the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination, and the path forward in those Four Noble Truths. But that's the answer. That's the final conclusion that everything the Buddha is drawing into and helping a student in a very short period of time to be able to deeply understand what's causing their discontent feelings. And then you go on this journey to understand it further and to dismantle it. Well, dependent origination is helping you to be able to do that you need to understand all the different aspects of dependent origination, that really the reason why craving and clinging exist is actually because of ignorance, that unknowing of true reality. Because of that unknowing of true reality, then it allows craving to exist. And because of craving, then the mind is experiencing discontentedness. So this is the detailed description of helping you to understand why we're working to eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance. The Buddha is explaining to you that this is why you keep experiencing rebirth over and over, and this is why you keep experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again. And when you deeply penetrate this and you independently verify it, you can see the truth for yourself, that he's fully explaining it to you here, and now you can dismantle this by acquiring wisdom, because the exact opposite of ignorance is wisdom. So if you no longer have ignorance, you will no longer experience unwise decision making. And when you're not experiencing unwise decision making, you won't pick up a consciousness to continue this constant cycle. And that consciousness leads to a physical body. That's what name and form is. Now the consciousness and the physical body come together, where then there's these 6 sense bases that are starting to mature and develop inside the womb of our mother. And then we start having contact through those 6 sense bases. And when we have contact through those 6 sense bases, we start experiencing pleasant feelings. And now when we experience those conditioned pleasant feelings, we start craving and we start clinging, that we want these pleasant feelings to be permanent. So we start clinging to things, holding on to things. And the more we're holding on to this world, wanting things to be pleasurable, we keep experiencing existence over and over and over again. And this is caused by birth. And once there's birth, there's going to be aging and death. And now that leads to sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair, this whole mass of discontentedness. So what you're doing on this path is you're going all the way back to the beginning of this equation, which starts off this whole chain of events, which is ignorance. And you're transforming your mind away from ignorance to cultivate wisdom. So that's where you ultimately would like to get to. So that's why when students first start with me, I set the groundwork that you're not to believe anything related to the teachings of the Buddha, because belief, you don't know what's true or false. So I encourage students to work towards wisdom, which is learning, reflecting, and practicing. And that's how you transform the mind. By acquiring wisdom, you're antidoting and transforming this ignorance. And now you dismantle this whole entire sequence of events that's leading to discontentedness and that's leading to your rebirth. So the Buddha is explaining this as it relates to your body and how to get rid of this continuous cycle of rebirth and no longer taking on an existence in another realm of existence. You're not interested in coming back to experience it all over and over again. Instead, use this existence to get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. And then from this human existence, experiencing that peace and joy, you will get to enjoy that for the rest of your life, and then you won't come back into the cycle of rebirth to experience rebirth over and over and over again. While there are certain aspects of life that are certainly pleasurable, there's certain miseries and certain grief and certain despair that you wouldn't be interested to repeat. And that's what this path can get you to, is the point where you'll never again experience any kind of mental pain or mental anguish or agitation, that you can escape all of that through the Eightfold Path, purifying the mind, getting to enlightenment, and then escaping this continuous cycle. So let me see what questions you guys have on this chapter. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here. So let's move on to the very last chapter for today, which is chapter 10. This is an interesting story. I'll take a little sip of water to prepare to read for this. Okay, the title of this one is The Most Reprehensible for the Performance of Unwholesome Actions. Then the student asked the perfectly enlightened one, "And you, friend Gotama, how many kinds of rod do you describe for the performance of unwholesome action, for the carrying out of unwholesome action?" Student, the Tathagata is not accustomed to use the description rod, rod. The Tathagata is accustomed to use the description action, action. But friend Gotama, how many kinds of action do you describe for the performance of unwholesome action, for the carrying out of unwholesome action? Student, I describe 3 kinds of action for the performance of unwholesome action, for the carrying out of unwholesome action. That is bodily action, verbal action, and mental action. How then, friend Gotama, is bodily action one, verbal action another, and mental action still another? Bodily action is one, student, verbal action is another, and mental action is still another. Of these 3 kinds of action, friend Gotama, thus analyzed and distinguished, which kind of action do you describe as the most reprehensible for the performance of unwholesome action, for the carrying out of unwholesome action, bodily action or verbal action or mental action? Of these 3 kinds of action, student, thus analyzed and distinguished, I describe mental action as the most reprehensible for the performance of unwholesome action, for the carrying out of unwholesome action, and not so much bodily action and verbal action. Do you say mental action, friend Gotama? I say mental action, student. Do you say mental action, friend Gotama? I say mental action, student. Do you say mental action, friend Gotama? I say mental action, student. Thus, the student made the perfectly enlightened one maintain his statement up to the 3rd time, after which he rose from his seat and went to this place or this other student. Thereafter, the householder, Pali, came to the perfectly enlightened one to ask about the conversation the perfectly enlightened one had with this other student, and discussed that the bodily action is the most reprehensible for the performance of unwholesome action, for the carrying out of unwholesome action, and not so much the verbal action and the mental action. The perfectly enlightened one, however, maintained his doctrine and spoke further. What do you think, householder? Is this town of Nalanda successful and prosperous? Is it populous and crowded with people? Yes, venerable sir, it is. What do you think, householder? Suppose a man came here brandishing a sword and spoke thus, "In one moment, in one instant, I will make all the living beings in this town of Nalanda into one mass of flesh, into one heap of flesh." What do you think, householder? Would that man be able to do that? Venerable sir, 10, 20, 30, 40, or even 50 men would not be able to make all the living beings in this town of Nalanda into one mass of flesh, into one heap of flesh, into one moment, in one moment or instant. So what does a single trivial man count for? What do you think, householder? Suppose some ascetic or Brahmin came here possessed of supernormal power and attained to mastery of mind. And he spoke thus: I will reduce this town of Nalanda to ashes with one mental act of hate. What do you think, householder? Would such an ascetic or Brahmin be able to do that? Venerable Sir, such an ascetic or Brahmin, possessed of supernormal power and attained to mastery of mind, would be able to reduce 10, 20, 30, 40, or even 50 Nalandas to ashes with one mental act of hate. So what does a single trivial Nalanda count for? Householder, pay attention how you reply. What you said afterwards does not agree with what you said before, nor does what you said before agree with what you said afterwards. Okay, so let me help you understand what's happening here in the teaching that you can understand. So the Buddha is being asked by these individuals that, what is the most reprehensible thing that you could do? Either bodily action, verbal action, or mental action. Which is going to cause the most damage and the most challenges and the most difficulties in a particular population of people or in the world? And the Buddha goes through and is on record for saying it's mental action that is the worst and most reprehensible. This is going to cause the most harm in the world. If there's a mental action of hate, that's going to cause the most difficulties in the world. Well, this particular person asked the Buddha to repeat that 3 times to get him on record that that's exactly what he's teaching. But then this person has then said that no, he thinks that it's bodily action that is actually more reprehensible and that's going to cause the most harm. But then the Buddha talks with this household practitioner and he asks that household practitioner a few questions. And this is one of the ways that the Buddha would teach, is by asking somebody questions and then getting them to respond so that they can see the answer for themselves. Because oftentimes the mind knows the correct answer, but it just hasn't brought it up to the conscious mind. So the Buddha asked questions in order to get this student to be able to understand with wisdom. So he asked the student, would somebody in one instant with a sword be able to destroy through bodily action the entire town? This really populous town with lots of people in it, would they be able to destroy the entire town and kill all the people with just one bodily action of a sword? And this household practitioner says, no, not even 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 men would be able to do that with one bodily action. So then the Buddha talks about this mental action of somebody coming into the town with mental hate and then having some mental action based in hate. And then the householder agrees that this would destroy the town, because essentially this mental hate gets passed along from person to person to person. That if you have a certain mental action of hate, it then spreads and spreads and spreads and spreads throughout the town. And this is going to destroy the town. And the householder says it can destroy multiple towns of this same sort, right? So the Buddha is helping this person to see that it's mental action that is causing the most harm. And this is why everything on the path to enlightenment is all about training the mind. And once you train the mind, then the bodily actions and verbal actions will follow along. But if you're just training the body, you're just training the verbal action, then you're not actually going to the root cause, which is the mind itself. Because in order to have a bodily action or a verbal action, there needs to be mental action behind it. So by training the mind and focusing on the mind and understanding that the mind is what's causing the most harm, then you can focus on the real source of the problem. You can uproot the problem and now get to a real solution. So understanding that the mental action is the most impactful, the one that's going to produce the most unwholesome results, now you focus on training the mind, because that's what's going to then lead to certain bodily actions and verbal actions, and the mental actions are the most harmful. So let me see if you guys have any questions on this particular chapter. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'll do then is I will just end class by thanking all of you guys and then at the same time invite you to join for future classes, where next Saturday we're going to be in the Pali Canon and English Study Group, Volume 6, chapters 11 through chapters 20. There, we're going to be studying that next set. So you can read those before class and or after class. And then when you come to class, you can learn in the class and ask any questions that you like. So that's going to be next Saturday. And then this Sunday, which is tomorrow, we're going to be in the group learning program where I'm going to be in Volume 1, Chapter 24. This is where I'm going to be sharing with you the misunderstandings of Gotama Buddha's teachings. Because over a 6.5-month period, I've been sharing what is the path to enlightenment in the group learning program. And now we're going to go piece by piece by piece through various misunderstandings that you're going to see in the world related to Gotama Buddha's teachings in this path to enlightenment. And this is a way for you to be able to see the path more clearly, because over the last 6.5 months, I've been sharing what is the path, and now I'm going to be sharing with you what the path isn't. Because when you enter into various communities, you might see them talking or teaching or doing certain things that aren't the teachings of the Buddha, and I'll be able to share that with you in our class tomorrow, so that then the path to enlightenment will become much more clear for you. So thank you all for joining for today's class. You're welcome to join any of these future classes, either online or in person here in Chiang Mai. Thank you again for your dedication and diligence to practicing the teachings of the Buddha. We'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Sawadee Khap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.